I mean, this team continues to exceed even the wildest of expectations. Mets fans always have very high expectations, always come in sometimes a little delusional, but, most of the time they're passionate, and you got to respect that.
I think Mets fans, it's a weird balance of
They
have high expectations, but they also expect everything to go wrong every year. It's a really unique balance. I think, Yankee fans, you expect to win the World Series every year. I think Mets fans expect to, get off to a crazy start and then watch everything collapse.
The June
and so it's a really weird juxtaposition that you got going on there. But listen, today, if you're a Mets fan listening, you're probably not thrilled to hear us open about how amazing they are, right? They dropped 2 of the Dodgers, but you have to keep everything in mind. It's been a pretty crazy season, and I think you think back to that Scherzer injury, right? May 18th, gets pulled from the game, and you find out the next day he's going to be out for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And you got to feel like the sky is falling, right? DeGrom's out now, Scherzer's out.
And Tyler McGill, too. Another third arm we're going to talk about, too.
How do the Mets respond? Their offense carries them, leads the MLB in batting average before the Dodgers series. They led the NL in weighted runs created plus and OPS, so the offense really responds there. And I think that's the most impressive thing to me is an injury like Scherzer's, when you lose that guy that was your number 2, was your number 1 for all of this year because DeGrom's been out, right? To lose that guy, to lose McGill, that can be a devastating blow for the offense to come in and really carry the team and fight back that hard. That's a good sign that this Mets team is maybe going to do things differently this year.
Yeah, and the reason why I'd say the Mets have been so hot in the month of May has really been depth. You look up and down their lineup, you have guys like Guillorme at the bottom. Of course, exactly. Got to break that down. But also, even guys like McNeil, they go up to bat and you expect him to get on base almost every time, it seems. The reliable hitters, they're guys that might not be your star, but are just role players with a championship mentality. And that's huge for this Mets team. Is up and down this lineup, it seems like you got guys who are willing just to play their role, do their job day in and day out. And that's a great attitude if you're going to be on the team like the Mets, who really has a chance at making a postseason run. And as you guys touched on already, it's the injuries that have absolutely plagued the Mets pitching staff so far. Scherzer out, and I was at the game just on Tuesday, I believe. It was Tyler McGill a handful of hours before the game on Tuesday against the Nationals. He was out on the bump at Citi Field getting some work in. He's surely going to return to some sort of rehab start in the coming weeks. He was getting his pickoff move down before he had a couple live ABs against McNeil and some others. So you could tell he was close for sure. So now that you have McNeil, then hopefully in the coming months, Scherzer and possibly DeGrom, things might really all come together at the right time for the New York Mets. When you have a lineup like this, and then you have 3 pitchers who hopefully will come back before you have time to make a run at a deep playoff run. So I'm excited for the Mets. The Mets are in a position that they really haven't been in past years, where the lineup is deep and the pitching staff really has an opportunity to do something if they're able to stay healthy.
Yeah,
it's a big if.
It's a massive if. But we've seen. Look at this. Since Max Scherzer got hurt on May 18th, I believe it was. Lou, you brought that up. The Mets have averaged 6.3 runs per game. That's insane. How insane is that? That's sick. To bring out that run support
day in and day out.
It's a very next man up mentality in that clubhouse. Buck Showalter's preaching next man up, hard work, team play, and just moving the next runner over. They play a good, very fun style of baseball to watch. I mean, they've played some of the games of the year, thrillers. For example, let's go back to I think there was a Mets Phillies game.
Phillies, a big comeback
where the Phillies did a Phillies thing and then blew a massive lead.
But then the same comeback against the Giants too. It's the same thing. And
that's another one.
You look at both of those comebacks and it's a real masterclass in just putting the ball in play and watching good things happen. And
2-out rallies.
To have guys like Starling Marte on that team where they can hit a ground ball and beat it out.
Right.
I think that's one of the things Steve Cohen did really well in putting this team together. Is you look at the depth, you look at the guys through the lineup. They can all make contact. They can all put the ball in play.
Yeah.
Right now, they're second in the entire league in batting average, a point behind the Colorado Rockies, which, go figure. Who thought the Rockies were going to be hitting this well?
Coors Field.
And it's early in the year. And it's early in the year.
But, the Mets, as I said, next man up mentality. Look at a guy like Nick Plummer coming in, just hitting 2 home runs at 440. I mean, this is a very small sample size. He has 9 at-bats, but 2 home runs, 4 hits, batting 444. This is 1722 OPS.
Some crazy stats.
Come on. Nick Plummer, another guy. We mentioned Guillorme. Just Guillorme's balling out. Everybody's really, it feels like everybody's up. They've been great acquisitions during the offseason. Really aggressive spending at and it's it's pretty much all worked out. I feel like
it allows that depth that you're talking about. It allows them to stomach a loss like Dom Smith having to send him down to the minors because he's just not getting it done. You can't send a guy down like that if you don't have depth, and you can't continue to succeed if you don't have depth. Dom Smith a couple of years ago was one of the biggest parts of this Mets lineup where you looked at it, it was, how are we going to get Alonso and Dom in the lineup together? Because these are the two guys we need to have in the lineup. Fast forward a couple of years, and it's been a little bit of a rough stretch for Dom. Right. The Mets are kind of able to stomach it, but the thing I'm a little concerned about is that the pitching since Scherzer's injury hasn't been great. That's where I think you're kind of starting to see a little bit of struggles. Bullpen, I think, in general, has just been an issue. I think Diaz has been good, but there are questions about the bullpen depth. And then the rotation ERA since Scherzer's injury, it's 5.24, and that's if you continue to rely on the offense, that's when you get into trouble. Look at this series against the Dodgers so far. We're only 2 games in.
Yeah,
they've scored
but
one
you go
run.
up against one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball, and the offense disappears. And even though I don't think the pitching's been terrible, it's you're not getting the lights out stuff that you might get if DeGrom or Scherzer's healthy, and that's where you're kind of going to get into trouble. And this series, it's a reminder that this is the team that's waiting for you in the LCS. Like,
exactly,
you can have a great regular season. This Dodgers team, this stacked team, best roster in baseball, one of the best pitching staffs statistically in baseball. That's the team that's waiting for you on the other side if you want to get to that World Series.
Exactly. And going into this West Coast swing for the Mets, they were 35-17. Obviously an unbelievable record, more than anything anyone could ever hope or ask for. But it is important to mention who those teams that they played through those 40-something games that they had an unbelievable record in. You know, they played a lot of games against the lowly Nationals, obviously the Phillies, the Marlins. Exactly. Within that NL East, there's a lot of teams such as the Marlins and the Nationals. They're going to gift you a lot of free games, and they've already eaten up a lot of their free games that they'll get in that NL East throughout the year. So now that you're facing teams like the Dodgers, obviously, you know, and the Angels and the Padres are not, snooze fest either.
Even though the Angels have been struggling, that's still a very talented team that
who
they
could
get things
absolutely
rolling,
come alive.
Right.
Exactly.
And the Padres are insane.
So when you have a Mets bullpen like the way they are, that's kind of your weak link. That's really difficult against solid teams on this West Coast swing. So I think it's a really good litmus test for the Mets, right? You've had kind of these cupcake victories through the first third of the season. Now you go to the West Coast and you really get to test your team. Where are we at without our star pitchers? And even when you have your top 3 pitchers arguably come back in DeGrom, Scherzer, and McGill, that bullpen's still going to be an issue. You know, so in August, September, if the Mets bullpen isn't fixed up, you know, that could be a serious problem. It might be the kind of issue that Cohen tries to address at the deadline, because if they're really going to make a run deep in the postseason, bullpen's so vital. You know, I'm a big Dodgers fan, and I've seen us
firsthand
absolutely get crushed in late season games due to our bullpen just self-destructing. So the Mets need to definitely shore up their bullpen, but that seems to be their weak link. And if they're able to do that, what a team they have.
And one of the things you brought up, right, the schedule, and I think there's 2 sides to that conversation. The first side is, hey, you can only play who's on your schedule. So if you're playing bad teams, hey, you still got to beat them, and that's what the Mets have done.
Right. But you can't drop to their level. A lot of teams do that.
That's what the Dodgers did this past weekend against the Pirates.
Exactly.
What the Yankees did last year against the Orioles, they didn't really come out hot.
But it is one of the things worth noting, right? According to Power Rankings Guru, I looked this up. Mets had the 9th easiest schedule in the MLB through 2 months of play, right? And you come into a June where they might not be looking forward to this month. 17 of their 24 games in June are against opponents with a winning record above 500.
Yeah.
And that's tough because you're looking at an MLB where it's like 12 teams have a record above 500. It's not a lot of teams. It's a very top-heavy league. And then the 7 games that aren't against 500 teams are NL, the divisional opponents. 6 of them are against the Marlins, who they can pitch. Like they might be going through some rough spots, but between you got Pablo and Sandy at the top of that rotation. You can't take any days off. There's no like easy 3-game series against the Pirates, because even the games against bad teams are divisional opponents that, hey, you still got to go out there and beat those divisional opponents. So it's a huge litmus test for them, and I think it's not a bad thing that they're getting beat by the Dodgers right now. I think it shows them, like, you might feel on top of the world, you still have there's still work to be done. I don't think that's a bad feeling to have in June. It's one thing if you're in September playing the Dodgers and you get swept, and that feels like kind of like a gut punch. Like, man, maybe we can't do this, but you're still in a spot where you can get guys back. You can go out and acquire guys. It's not a bad thing to struggle against the Dodgers.
Exactly. And this is kind of similar to last year. I mean, like, last year, the Mets were a completely different team. Like, they kind of fell off toward June. You know how they had that, like, West Coast trip where they played, like, the Giants, Dodgers, Padres.
And they went on a big losing streak.
They really struggled coming out of that. But this team feels a little bit different. Like, last year, I'd say the confidence meter going to that West Coast trip was like a 3 or 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
What's your guys' confidence meter right now out of 10 right now in the Mets going to this gauntlet
it's like
of June?
A 5. Well, just listen. I don't.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't. It's like a 5 or a 6 because I don't think they're gonna go out here and just beat every team and win every series. I think they're gonna struggle through this West Coast trip. I think the goal here is to play 500 ball. Your roster is not fully healthy, so it's not representative of what you're gonna be hopefully in the postseason. So I think your goal, especially against teams like the Padres and the Dodgers who are playing well, is play 500 ball, try and win the series against the Angels because the Angels are kind of struggling. If you can catch them while they're skidding, that's kind of what the Yankees did. The Yankees came in there, swept the Angels, and that's what you have to do when a team's kind of down bad like that.
I just disagree that my confidence level would be in that 5 range. To me, this is such a gritty team that it's like, even without your pitching staff, I would say it's at least a 7 or an 8. Given how they've played throughout the year. As you mentioned earlier, you can only play your schedule, and you can't sleep through those games, absolutely. And they've shown up for all those games. They've come through with a gritty, passionate approach throughout their team. And it seems that in past years, they really didn't have that cohesive play for one another feel that they have this year. And, that's a huge part of baseball, feel, clubhouse atmosphere. And when you get into those, dog days of summer, July, August, and you still have the camaraderie that the Mets seem to be brewing right now, I'm really excited for what the Mets, have to offer us. So 7 or an 8 from my confidence level, at least, not in the ballpark of 5.
Listen, that's where you made some very good points.
I will say I'm more on the Miles side of things because I just think, first of all, they have an 8.5 game lead over the Braves in a very weak.
My confidence with the team in general is a lot higher than it is for them this month. I think this month I'm kind of expecting them to struggle, but I think the NL East, you're waiting for the Braves to wake up. If that even happens, because I think Philly's in a bad spot there. Right? They just fired Joe Girardi.
The Phillies are chopped.
All right, Peter. Joe Girardi.
They are
chopped. That guy with the Yankees sometimes, but the Phillies are just a poorly constructed team, and I don't know that they're going to be able to turn it around.
Yep.
I like the Marlins.
They're a year or two away.
They got the pitching there. They need to boost up on the hitting, and
they're
not in the same league as the Mets right now, and then the Nationals.
They're just a Juan Soto
It's not
show.
even worth talking about. Please trade Juan Soto. I feel so bad for the guy.
Yeah.
And that's why, the Mets go into this LA series winning 6 straight games. They sweep Philly, they sweep Washington. And I wasn't riding super high on them coming into this series because I expect the Mets to sweep those series. And even though they're blowing out those teams, it's a completely different thing going from those teams to the Dodgers, right? But that's the thing. The NL East, the shape that it's in, it's so weird to think about going into this season. A lot of people had the NL East pegged as one of the most competitive divisions in baseball. Never. I mean, when you thought the Braves coming off a World Series were going to be good. The Phillies went out and spent $240 million.
I was never in on the Phillies.
But it looked like they could definitely outslug some teams. And then I had the Marlins on my radar as a team that could come out and surprise some people. The NL East it's kind of been the gift that keeps on giving for the Mets, where they can kind of struggle. They can play 500. And they're going to be able to keep their lead in that division.
They will have it. Yeah, they're going to have a lead in the division. I just think the Braves are going to hit their World Series hangover. Phillies are chopped. Marlins are a year or two away.
I wouldn't rule out a Braves comeback. We saw it last year. I think there's enough talent in that. There's enough talent on that team.
There is definitely enough talent.
There's enough pitching where, I think the Phillies are a poorly constructed team. I think the Braves could maybe be
the Braves are.
I think the Braves are in a bad. I don't think that they're poorly constructed.
The disparity between the Mets and the rest of the division is
ridiculous.
Bigger than any division in baseball.
Oh, absolutely.
And no comparison, really. So it'd be shocking to see the Mets not take the division, absolutely. But it's not going to be an absolute cakewalk. Obviously, one of these teams is going to turn it on. You have the bats of Philly and championship experience of Atlanta. It's not like everyone's just going to go to sleep throughout the year. They play each other.
And the Marlins are just like spoilers. They play spoilers. They
exactly.
will.
I don't
punch
see the
up.
Marlins themselves
I'm
a
bigger
threat
on the Marlins.
this year.
I'm bigger on the Marlins than I am on the Phillies. I still
Exactly.
have the Braves,
Same.
but
I agree.
I would not be surprised if the Marlins end up finishing third.
I think the Marlins are the third best team in the NL East. I'm dead serious. Like the Marlins have the insane pitching. They have a couple of bats here and there. Jazz Chisholm's awesome.
They're going to be such a fun team when it all comes together. When they couple years down the road, they're going to be a legitimate threat to the East, and they're just going to be such a fun team to watch. They've been in a real rough spot for it feels like over a decade.
Yeah.
When they get
feels like my entire lifetime knowing baseball, the Marlins have never been.
They're gonna have
special.
a godly staff in a couple of years. You talk about Sixto Sanchez. You got Edward Cabrera.
Even Trevor Rogers has struggled a little bit. We've seen how good he can be.
Yeah,
he's definitely had his moments.
Rogers is what he is last year, and you pair that with Alcantara, Lopez, Sanchez, and Cabrera, that's 5 arms. That's a 5 deep rotation potentially. And then I think you get a couple more bats in there, and that's a really fun Marlins team. They play with excitement. You gotta love Jazz Chisholm. I think he's
you like
the
Jazz.
heart of that team. I love Jazz.
I mean, look, their uniforms are sick too. Everything's up for the Marlins.
Miami colors are
they're cool.
Just good colors.
The vibes are great when in Miami. But let's go back to the Mets. I think the Mets are. I believe in the Mets a lot more than last year, just because we've seen them win in so many different ways. We've seen them blow teams out. We've seen them win close games. We've seen them win ugly games and make crazy comebacks. Teams that can do that are the best teams in baseball. Like the best teams in baseball, teams that can do that, they're for real. It's not a fluke. Like blowing a team out every time, and then playing a good team and getting killed. That's a fluke.
And the things that I appreciate the most about the Mets, I feel like, are the intangible things. You know,
the little things.
Yeah, and it's the things that you feel like everyone just gets along in a way that a championship team almost always has.
Right.
The Cubs we saw in 2016 when they broke just the vibes that were flowing around there. It really seems like everything's clicking right now for the Mets, and obviously right now they're on the West Coast, big test, but this is without their big arms. And once they get those big arms back, this could really be the year for the Mets. This is a position that the Mets have absolutely not been in at all the last 5 years. So it's really something to be excited
about. You talk about those intangibles. I think it ties a little bit back to the hiring of Buck Showalter. And Tyler, you were spewing some slander about
I'm not
Buck Showalter before the show, and I'm just not going to stand for that. Buck Showalter,
I'm not
one of the best managers in baseball.
He's
Don't
a guy.
Interrupt me while I'm talking about my guy, Buck Showalter.
I'll let you have
Got
your Buck
an
Showalter
Oilers
moment.
shirt back home. Went to Camden Yards, bought a Buck Showalter shirt. Who does that? Me, because I love Buck Showalter, man. And this team, they're fundamentally sound. They're feeding off their manager. They love Buck. You could tell it by the way they're throwing birthday parties for him. They got piñata for him. Buck's talking about Shakira in the press conference.
Let's go.
That was a good.
He's got the team in the right direction. Not that it was all Luis Rojas' fault last year, but it just feels like Showalter's the guy that he steps in with the experience that he has. He got the team to buy into what he was selling, and they're just feeding off of him. I don't think you can undersell what Buck's done for this team.
Oh, definitely. And the vibes are unbelievable at the Mets. I mean, it just feels different. Like, it genuinely feels different. But before we head into a quick break, what's each of yours one bold prediction for the Mets in the second half of the season?
I guess I can go ahead and go first. Let me think. I think that they'll absolutely have a successful second half of the year. I think that it is I don't even know how bold this is. I think they take the NL pennant. I do. I think that the New York Mets take the NL pennant.
I think it is bold because the team that they got to fight for that is the Dodgers. But it's something that they can definitely do.
Don't count on a team like the Padres or even the Brewers if they get some offense.
As a Dodgers fan, I'm so pessimistic about the future of the Dodgers at this point in the year.
Really?
Just because
having the best team in baseball every year is enough for you?
No, it's not even about that. That's what I'm saying about the Mets. It's the intangibles. It's that when you buy players in the manner that the Dodgers buy players in, there's not nearly the same camaraderie in the clubhouse we had when we had Kike Hernandez, Alex Verdugo. These were self-made.
A young Cody
Jock
Bellinger.
Peterson. We had a feel in the clubhouse, a certain excitement and a vibe going that we don't have any longer. Given that we now go out and purchase players in this way. Obviously, the Mets did a similar thing naturally.
But I get where you're coming. It's a little bit different. I do want to
The
ask you this,
grit
Anderson.
isn't there, to be honest.
As a Dodgers fan, like, does it feel like you're just sleepwalking through the regular
It does,
season, even though
and
you're
it
playing
almost
so well?
always
Cruising.
feels like that, to be honest.
Right.
You get that sometimes as a Yankee fan because the expectation's always to win a World Series.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's like you
It's
don't
get there
you don't
first,
take
yeah.
the time to appreciate the regular season. I think
Right.
Yankee fans are doing it this year because this year feels special. But
It's fun.
I
yeah.
can see where you're coming from. Right, the Dodgers kind of feels like the regular
You
season
expect to
doesn't
win.
matter.
Exactly.
There's not
We
that
lose 3
excitement
games in Pittsburgh, and and everyone's kind
there.
of like,
How was that?
Yeah,
by
how?
the way?
Yeah,
to
tell
be
us a little
honest,
bit about that.
it's kind of there's never that much of an intense feeling of fear or anything like that. How could you really feel like this is going to keep up?
mean,
I was just laughing because I was scrolling social media and it wasn't even like Dodgers fans. They were mad. They're like, "How are the Pittsburgh Pirates
Yeah.
so good against us?" Like
Yeah,
they were
it
just,
was-
they were just in disbelief.
They took 5 of 6 against the Dodgers this season.
It's shocking,
Is their
but it's
season
not
series is
something
already
that,
over?
Yeah, it's over.
Oh my god.
that
Yeah.
really scares you
Pirates own the Dodgers.
as something that could stay consistent, obviously. And it's funny.
It's why I'm not surprised that the Dodgers came in and beat the Mets in the first 2 games. 'Cause
Yeah.
you had to know
They-
they were steaming mad.
They took that personal.
because they got made fun of for getting swept by the Pirates. The Pirates' social media was
Oh,
in
that
their
was very. You
comment
saw
section.
that?
Shout out to
And-
the Pirates' social media
Yeah,
staff. They are
great
awesome.
job.
And that's
But-
simply not going to stay consistent. The Dodgers are so stacked. They know after a 3-game slide they're not going to stay consistent at that level of play. So yeah, I absolutely do think there's a level of, as a Dodger fan, you're sleepwalking through the regular season. You have these high expectations and you don't focus on the everyday games throughout the summer. But, I'm pretty pessimistic about the Dodgers' playoff hopes this year, even though they're as stacked as they are. But I think that they will make a run, but it's going to be the Mets right there with them at the end of the year.
All right, I'll give you my bold take. I'll try
Yeah.
and make it quick. It's kind of a joke, kind of not. Luis Guillorme wins the batting title.
Ooh.
He gets enough play appearances. Listen, at least he's killing it right now. His batting average is at 360. So it's kind of a joke, but it's also a testament to look how good their depth is. Like this is a guy they could take off the bench. Not a guy that I think they expected to be a starter this year, right? He's just kind of filled in whenever he's needed to. But guy's absolutely balling out, and I see a big second half for Luis Guillorme where he raises some eyebrows for sure. So that's my bold take.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a similar. I mean, to end the segment, I'm gonna say something along those lines.
You're just
But I
gonna
think,
steal my thing?
no, I'm gonna go with Jeff McNeil winning the batting title. I think Jeff McNeil.
Interesting.
I don't know why, but I think everybody kind of calms down, and then McNeil has a hot run where he just ends up hitting 330.
Quietly having a good year. We'll get into that. I
quiet-
think in the
he's
All-Star
been-
talk.
he's been really
quietly having a very good year.
Such a reliable guy.
He's been great, but
Good to see him back to doing what he's doing.
of course, he had a rough year last year, but he's back.